Is Trump really taking on the deep state and the globalists? Is the American system really returning? And what in the world is going on with the mullahs in Iran? Well, we have some very special guests joining us today to break down all of that and more. Pastor Reza Safa, former radical Shiite Muslim from Iran, became a pastor. He's going to break down for us what's happening in that country as the church expands rapidly. We also have my friend Chris Casler on to tell the story of a girl here in the United States who left Islam, became a Christian, and was ruthlessly chased down by her own family. They wanted to kill her. Stay tuned for that. We also have the great Brad Ward of Armor of Truth joining us today to talk about whether Trump is really taking on the deep state and the globalists and what that means for us. We also have a lot of important news. Welcome to the Sentinel Report. I'm Alex Newman, your host. Today is April 27th. We're so grateful to have you with us if you're listening to us live or whether you're hearing us on the replay on radio, podcast, YouTube, Rumble, any of the streaming services that broadcast our program. We are grateful for you. And if you are listening to us on one of the podcast services, I've been told that it helps for people to give us a ranking there. So if you would, if you're listening to us on Spotify or Amazon or any of those, Sentinel Report with Alex Newman, just give us that ranking there, 5-star ranking. That'll help more people find this information. We're going to start like we do every day with a word from the Word. This comes out of Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. The Word of God reads, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Folks, it's a good reminder. I know a lot of us are carrying a lot of baggage with us right now with everything going on in the world. We've all got responsibilities and the economy doesn't seem to be doing so well. There's a lot to think about. In fact, it was weighing on me this morning, but we can just remember that when we hand our burdens and our problems and even our children to the Lord, they are in very good hands. He can handle it all. So I do encourage you to do that. Be in prayer for our nation, for our families, for our churches, and for all that is good. We have a lot going on in the news today. We're going to have the great Andrew Muller joining us, Chief of Operations at Liberty Sentinel Media, also a contributor to the New American Magazine. And we do want to encourage you to check out our sponsors, folks. We've got a lot of really great folks who make all this possible, including our friends at Classical Conversations, which is actually where I have my own children enrolled. Go check it out, classicalconversations.com/LSM. If you've got children or grandchildren that you love, you don't want to miss it. Now, we all know that there were shots fired at the White House Correspondents Association dinner over the weekend. Apparently, Trump and everybody is safe. I want you to see this video if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet. Incredible. The alleged shooter, the White House Correspondents Association dinner, has been identified as Cole Thomas Allen. He's a 31-year-old radical teacher out of California, where else? And unbelievable. Apparently, the only one hurt was a Secret Service officer. Trump has described this individual as a lone wolf and a whack job. Apparently, he was armed with multiple weapons. But sounds like the Secret Service officer is going to be okay. But I want you to check this out.
Shall I post it as soon as...
Now, this character, Allen, the accused in this case, wrote a manifesto, and we're not going to read the whole thing to you because we don't want to give these people extra publicity, but he did have some really nasty things to say about the President of the United States, called him a pedophile, a rapist, a traitor. Yeah, this is basically what the fake news has been saying for a while now. He said in his manifesto he was planning to target senior administration officials, prioritizing them in rank from highest ranking to lowest. He did specifically exclude Kash Patel. Not quite sure why. Maybe a diversity, equity, and inclusion thing. I really don't know. But he said he was going to use a shotgun to minimize casualties so that other innocent people didn't get hurt. But he said if we have to get innocent people, you know, they're not really innocent because they were there anyway. And if I have to kill them to get this pedophile, rapist, traitor, then so be it. So pretty wild, folks. He listed some of the responses to objections to his mass murder plan. Pretty nasty stuff. Turn the other cheek, but you know, just crazy, just crazy. He also mocked the Secret Service while they were doing their job. He couldn't believe that he was able to check in to this hotel the day before with a bunch of guns. Now, Trump went on 60 Minutes today to discuss this shooting. Here's what he said about this manifesto.
The so-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, "Administration officials, they are targets. And he also wrote this: "I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, he's a sick person.
Oh, you know the fake media had a field day being able to say, hey, rapist, pedophile. What a bunch of clowns. Very typical of the fake media, but that's what they do. It is what they do. Now, Trump also mentioned the fact that this teacher who tried to shoot up the place went to a No Kings protest. Here's what he said.
He had attended a No Kings protest in California.
No Kings. Yeah.
What did security tell you about what may have been his motives?
The reason you have people like that is you have people doing No Kings. I'm not a king. What I am, if I was a king, I wouldn't be dealing with you.
Right. Duh. Right. That's pretty obvious. Now, there's some weird stuff going on with this. But before we get to that, Andrew, what do you make of this assassination? I mean, to me, it from what we've seen so far, it looks like just, the fake media and the hysterical rhetoric from the radical left. I mean, we've played right here on this show, Democrat politicians calling for violence, fake media openly calling for violence, that Trump is literally Hitler and all the rest of it. What's your take on this shooting so far?
Well, it's historically fascinating. Of course, the Washington Hilton, where the White House Correspondents Dinner was hosted, that's where Ronald Reagan was shot by John Hinckley in 1981. So now this is the second assassination attempt at the Washington Hilton. So maybe stay clear of that place. Not super good reviews. But all jokes aside, when you read this killer's manifesto, which I did, you see that he has this arrogance about him that if I don't do this, nobody else will. And he's very indoctrinated with radical left propaganda that, Trump is Hitler, Trump is evil, he's the manifestation of all things we're against, democracy, all these things. And somebody has to stand up and take him down. So that sort of radicalism is what people have been warning about for literally decades, that we're going to get to a point in time in this country where if you stand up for reasonable ideas, you're going to be labeled as a threat, equivalent to Stalin, Mussolini, or Hitler, who has to be dealt with at any cost. So that's the sort of radicalism we see here. Unfortunately, it always seems to be younger people with Trump who are being radicalized to, hurt him and his team. And it's really discouraging. But I think a lot of this, Alex, has to do with propaganda and the lies of the media.
Yeah, it's shameful to see this. And in fact, I've actually spoken at that hotel before. I gave a speech at a Moms for Liberty event there, I think last year or year before last. And it's crazy to see this. And it's crazy to see that our country's at a point now where we've got, like, on a regular basis now, people trying to shoot politicians, people committing violence against each other in the streets. It's very sad to see what's happening in our country, folks. So I hope you'll keep our country in prayer. I hope you'll keep our leaders in prayer. And even if we disagree with somebody's policies, shooting people is never going to be the answer. There's some weird stuff about this too, and I don't quite know what to make about it, but it's getting a lot of attention. Over on X, there's an anonymous account, Henry Martinez, posted in 2023 a weird tweet that said Cole Allen, and there's an image there for his banner image, I guess, that people have looked at and say it looks a little bit like some sort of shooting of Trump. So we don't know what all that means. This was posted in 2023. We'll keep you updated if we learn anything more. We do know that Allen donated $25 to Kamala Harris through Act Blue. So there's a lot to break down here, and we'll keep you updated. We're not going to let this one, like the other ones, fade from public memory. We've got to know what's going on here, and we have an obligation, I think, to try to diffuse some of this extremism going on. Now, Trump did just last week, we mentioned it was going to happen. He just did read 2 Chronicles chapter 7 as part of America Reads the Bible. I want you to listen to this.
If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land.
Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, folks. And again, even if you don't agree with everything that our president's ever done, and we certainly don't, what a joy it is to have the leader of our country reading from the Holy Scriptures like that. And that particular scripture 2 Chronicles 7:14. Yes, it was a promise to the ancient Hebrews, but I believe that God of the Old Testament is the same as the God of the New Testament. God is the same always and forever, and I do believe that if God's people in this country would turn from their wicked ways, would repent, would humble themselves, and would pray, that God would, in fact, heal our land. And notice that's not talking to the infidels, the pagans, the whatever. That's talking to the people who are called by his name. So thank you, President Trump, for reading that. The whole Bible will be read in Washington, D.C. as part of this event, so keep them all in prayer. Now, the Soviet Poverty Law Center, the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, they attack me regularly. In fact, just 2 months before Charlie Kirk was murdered, they attacked he and I both in the same piece. They attacked Charlie for having me on stage at his events, and they attacked me for associating with Charlie. They lied about me. They said that I said education went wrong when the Supreme Court took Bible out of school. I said no such thing, so they obviously didn't even listen to my speech. Tells you what kind of intelligence they're producing. But we've been exposing them for a long time, and last week, justice finally appears to be catching up. I want you to check out Kash Patel talking about the unsealed indictment brought by a grand jury.
We're here today is to announce what the general just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive, sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple of brief things here.
I'm grateful to see that. You know, when we had Kash Patel on before he became FBI director, he promised he was going to go after all the government gangsters. And, you know, we didn't see a lot for the first year, if we're quite honest. But this is good. If you go back and you read the 2018 intelligence report I wrote about the Southern Poverty Law Center for the Law Enforcement Intelligence Brief, you'll find a lot of this stuff that's now coming out. We were warning senior law enforcement executives about all across this country many years ago. So it's long overdue, folks. They were taking money from scared little old ladies that they were tricking into believing that there's Ku Klux Klan under every bed. And they were using it to fund the Ku Klux Klan, and they were using it to fund Nazis to continue scaring people out of their money. It's disgraceful. It's grotesque. And I'm so glad it finally looks like it's coming to a stop. Now, Alex Jones actually pointed out back in 2017 that the SPLC was funding the Charlottesville fiasco. Check this out.
This was his take.
Charlottesville was mainly a bunch of homosexual leftists dressing up like Nazis who'd all formerly worked for Obama or Hillary, part of their art club. And then they lured a bunch of reporters there and some real white supremacists so the police could stand down and collide them into the folks. I pointed out that some of the same leftist foundations are funding the white supremacists that are funding real white supremacists in Ukraine. I got sued for that. And I said it was all part of leftists coming out to come to this big event and hope there was some big crisis out of it to demonize the right in general.
Now, that guy you saw on the screen with Alex, Nick Fuentes, I have my suspicions about who's funding him. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see similar schemes going on there. But big changes in marijuana policy now. Marijuana has been reclassified under the Attorney General Todd Blanche. They ordered it rescheduled as a Schedule 3 drug, which means it's recognized for various medicinal purposes. Previously, it was Schedule 1, which means there is no valid use of this under federal law. So very rapidly, we're seeing the deregulation, even the encouragement of various drugs. But at the same time, we see efforts to go after nicotine. But it is very interesting. Like, you want to take shrooms? Fine. You want to smoke weed? Fine. You want nicotine? No, you can't do that. Andrew's got an excellent report over at the New American Magazine about this very issue. Andrew, why don't you break it down for us?
Yeah, well, thanks, Alex. And this is something that's been interesting to me for a while. You know, I do personally use nicotine. I'm not telling other people to. But when I started looking into it, just out of personal curiosity, I discovered is that there has been a global crackdown on nicotine. Just last week, Parliament in the United Kingdom passed a bill, or they agreed to the final text of a bill that will most likely pass, that is going to literally ban the sale of tobacco for anybody born after 2008. New Zealand, Australia has also done this, where they've regulated it, non-tobacco nicotine products such as nicotine pouches and vape have been regulated from here to Timbuktu. Australia did a prescription program for a while where you needed a prescription for nicotine. And the long and short of it, Alex, is that nicotine has been revealed to potentially decrease the chance of people getting Parkinson's or getting Alzheimer's. It also boosts cognition. There's a lot of benefits to it. And this is pure nicotine I'm talking about. Nicotine is a naturally occurring substance. Of course, it's in the tobacco leaf most notably, but it's also in the nightshade family of vegetables and plants. But when you take nicotine through a pouch or a patch, or a gum or something of that nature, opposed to smoking or chewing tobacco, which is carcinogenic because of the pyrazines they add and the combustion of smoking, which makes it cancerous. That's bad, of course. But when you take it in a pure sense, there are health benefits. And it's fascinating because Chuck Schumer, Kathy Hochul, Joe Biden, all these people have attacked nicotine. Kathy Hochul just last week introduced the 2027 budget for New York City. In it, a 75% tax on non-tobacco nicotine products like nicotine pouches. Joe Biden introduced in the 11th hour of his presidency FDA regulations to limit the amount of nicotine in tobacco. Of course, President Trump just introduced deregulation to move marijuana from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3 substance. So you see this boosting of marijuana in this crackdown on nicotine, and it makes you wonder why. Because nicotine in a pure form is not carcinogenic. It's just not. That's a fact. RFK Jr. has talked about the potentials of nicotine, and yet you have Trump and a lot of Democrats pushing for the green lighting of psychedelics and marijuana drugs. And we know that marijuana and cannabis actually can cause a lot of health issues. Actually, in an interesting study that came out through Boston's School of Public Health, they uncovered that men who use marijuana 1 or more times a week are twice as likely to have miscarriages and pregnancies with a woman. So when you take that tied with the fact that marijuana makes you easier to control, it makes you lazy, it has these health effects, and then nicotine, on the other hand, boosts cognition, has a lot of long-term health benefits if taken through a pouch, a patch, or something of that nature. It makes you wonder if this is something like ivermectin during COVID, where it was a cheap, readily available substance that had a lot of health benefits, and the government was cracking down on it. But interestingly, since we've been talking about states, Ron DeSantis has also made a move in slamming obscene DEI spending. He signed a bill just recently banning local diversity offices and net zero mandates. Governor DeSantis signed 2 major pieces of legislation on Wednesday that aimed at eradicating woke ideology from Florida's local governments, protecting the state's energy sector from the climate agenda. And this is fantastic because, as you know, Alex, we have been covering the United Nations climate agenda for years. You've been going to those summits for decades. I've gone to the last few with you. And the United Nations has said, our new objective is pushing climatism, pushing the climate change agenda locally. So the fact that Ron DeSantis signed these 2 bills is fantastic. Speaking at Florida State College in Jacksonville, he signed Senate Bill 1134 and House Bill 1217, characterizing the move as a victory for common sense over the higher echelons of society, he said, and corporate bureaucracies. It is fantastic. SB 1134 expands Florida's previous bans on DEI. While the state had already eliminated DEI in public universities and K-12 education, the new law bars counties and municipalities, governmentally speaking, from funding or into implementing these policies. So this is really, really significant. Now, speaking of significance, too, we just had a great interview with Representative Thomas Massie from Kentucky. He talked about the Epstein files and his war against it. Here's what he's told you, Alex.
So this really is a litmus test. Are we going to have a system of justice that prosecutes these offenders? We're not talking about a Me Too movement here. We're talking about people who did clearly criminal things to clearly people who were children and adults. Do you want a system of justice, or do you really want to give people a pass because they were politically connected? And then also, do you care that your government was being steered by people who were going to these parties, that was being influenced by Jeffrey Epstein? I think you should care, because if you don't, you're never going to get the answers to all the other questions. And why in the world, what interest does the FBI and the DOJ have in covering this stuff up? That's another question that the public should be asking. Why don't they just produce all the files? Why is it that Todd Blanche will let you know there's still 3 million files that they believe aren't something they need to release, so they're not going to release them? Why not release them? And why not comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act? I will tell you this. This is a bill. It's not a subpoena. I admire what they're doing over in the Oversight Committee, but all that evaporates at the end of this Congress, which is just about 8 months away.
It's so true. And if we don't get to the bottom of this Epstein case, I don't know what else matters. If our government's going to be run by pedophiles, if our government's going to run by people who are intertwined with elitists in the Epstein class like Epstein, And if the American people are going to roll over and let that type of character and those type of people run our government, I don't know why we even continue on. If we can't get to the bottom of this, we're not going to be able to get to the bottom of anything. In one final clip, Massey did say he will not go away. He will not give this up. He is not going to stop, even if it costs him his election. It was a very powerful statement. Here's what he said in his exclusive interview with Alex.
Congress comes in, but the thing that doesn't go away is the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The next attorney general can prosecute this attorney general for not following the law. And 100 years from now, if an attorney general stumbles across some files or a dusty binder that says Epstein on it, they have 30 days to release it. So that's another thing. Understand that until we get justice for the victims, I will not go away, and this issue will not go away.
So true. You can check out that full interview at thenewamerican.com. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Classical Conversations, a great homeschool network. It's the largest homeschool network in the world. You can check them out. And we really appreciate your support for our sponsors. They are absolutely fantastic. If you'll check out classicalconversations.com and support our sponsors, that would be much appreciated. Now, we have a fantastic segment coming up that we don't want you to miss with Pastor Reza F. Safa. He's going to be talking about Islam, the mullahs, and all things going on in the world. Stay tuned.
Introducing Perform Light. Perform Light helps support your body's performance from within. This plant-powered electrolyte drink helps you be the power plant that you are meant to be. Unlike most electrolyte products in the market, Perform Light is more than just a sodium, potassium, or magnesium-containing electrolyte formula. It is bioenergetic nutrition. Perform Light has a full spectrum of minerals derived from pure, natural seawater, so the balance of electrolytes in Perform Light is the same that exists in the body, making the nutrient load more bioavailable. In addition, Perform Light contains a blend of 31 powerhouse vegetable and fruit concentrates and herbal extracts rich in bioflavonoids and antioxidants to enhance energy and oxygen utilization naturally without stimulants or sugar. And of course, Perform Light is powered by VNI's proteasome technology for rapid and sustained absorption of its nutrient payload. Better absorbed minerals means more electrolytes to promote the essential electrical functions of cells in your body. Unlock the power of your mitochondria. Harness the energy of your cells. This is nutrition that gets in and energy that comes out. Feel the energy. Be the energy with Perform Light.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, obviously the war in Iran continues to dominate the headlines. It's like a roller coaster, a seesaw. Like 1 minute the strait's open, 1 minute it's not. 1 minute the bombs are dropping, 1 minute they're not. 1 minute the civilization is going to be destroyed. The next minute it's going to be there. Here to help us make sense of all of this is a wonderful guest, Pastor Reza Safa. He is actually a former radical Shiite Muslim from Iran who came to know the Lord back in 1980. He is today an internationally recognized minister, author. He's an expert on Islam and certainly the Iranian regime. He has traveled to dozens of countries around the world on crusades. He launched the Christian Satellite Network, which incidentally is broadcasting into Iran, part of the reason why the church is growing so rapidly in that nation. We praise the Lord for all of his efforts. He's written a lot of books on this, including Inside Islam from 1996. He did The Coming Fall of Islam in Iran back in 2006. That was 20 years ago. Pastor, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks, Alex.
It's an honor and a pleasure. So, Pastor, I wanted to get your take. I mean, everybody's got an opinion on the war on Iran, but very few of us actually have studied the Iranian regime in depth like you have. Very few of us have the background that you have. So what's your take on this? I mean, what's going on with the war? Is it going well? Is this what we should be doing as a country? Is the Iranian regime really about to fall? What do you say?
This is very interesting questions, and I've been asked this quite a bit, actually. Looking at the formation of this system, of the regime in Iran, first it was a system of ideology. 1979, when Khomeini took over, the people around him, they were strong ideological believers of the Shia Islam. You understand the Shia, you have to go back to right after Muhammad's death and realized that there was a warfare within the Islamic community who should be the rightful leader for the Islamic community. And the party of Ali, which that means Shiite means the party of Ali, were the fourth Caliph, were saying that Ali should be the one that take over the Islamic community as a leader, as the Imam, because he was Muhammad's son-in-law. Of course, the other three Caliph disagreed and warfare broke out, and they started slaughtering one another. And Shiite became, if you would, an underdog, the little group, the minority. Of the 1.9 billion Muslims on the planet, only 20-25% are Shiite. And in Iran, you have the majority of Shiite, 90% Shiite. So that complex that has been in the hearts of Shiite, that they should be the leader, was revived in the Islamic Revolution, 1979. So that with that in mindset, Khomeini wanted to bring the Shiite group as the leaders of the Islamic community of the world. And to do that, because that hatred between Sunni and Shiite very strong. As a matter of fact, it's to a point where they say, if a Sunni kills a Muslim, a Shiite Muslim will inherit heaven, and vice versa. So that hatred is so strong. So in order for Khomeini to become, or the Shiite Islam, become the leaders of the Islamic community of the world of 52 Islamic nations, they had to start supporting the Hamas and the Palestinian issues. Although they hated one another, but that was the key for them to become a leader of the Sunnis by supporting mainly the Palestinian issue. And that became the ground foundation for the Islamic regime of the Ayatollahs in Iran. And that idea of becoming nuclear power would also put them at the top of the herd, if you would. And so with that ideology, the ideology became an ideology of force and power. And that's why they have what they have built this past 47 years militarily and regards to ballistic missiles and so on. So that idea, they will not give up. They're willing to lay down their lives. But that idea behind becoming the main guy in this whole arena of the Islamic force, they will not give that up. So the regime in Iran that is now led by the IRGC is to a point where they will not give up their nuclear power. That's their salvation. That's their Mahdi, if you would. And so this war is going to be prolonged. This is going to go, people thought this regime is going to fall. I thought there's no way, unless you kill every single one of their leaders and the entire regime, you will have to deal with these guys for years to come.
Wow. And one of the things that we have learned about this regime is they seem to be cooperating closely with the communist dictatorship in Beijing, with the Putin government in Moscow, the Kremlin. I think Americans have this idea that it's just this like isolated pariah and it has no friends. I mean, it's true that a lot of the Arab governments have been supportive of the war effort, but we know that the Chinese and the Russians are healthy. Why do you think the Chinese and the Russians and so many other governments are still so friendly? I mean, South Africa has just been openly very supportive of this regime. Why do you think that is?
If you look at the economy of Islam, Islam's economy is similar to the communist economy. You have to realize that Islam is a political system more than a religious system. The religion is the covering for the political agenda that they have, the domination of the world. And so if you look at their economy, if you go back to the life of Muhammad and study the life of Muhammad, you see that economy is exactly the same as the communists. That's why Iran, with being so pro-God and so pro-theology, are great friends of China and communist Russia that are anti-God and atheists. That doesn't make sense, but their economy is the same. And so that is the ground for their relationship, and that will continue forever as long as Iran has oil and is strategically position. China and Russia will be interested in that land.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're almost out of time today, Pastor, but I want to ask you about the church in Iran. I know you broadcast into Iran through your Christian satellite network. You've been very active in crusades around the world. You, of course, left Islam, which our viewers should know is a capital offense. Apostasy from Islam is punishable by death. And yet we see all over Iran people coming to Christ. We see the church growing very rapidly. I've heard reports that some of the fastest growing churches in the world are actually in Iran. Talk to us about what's happening there.
Well, people tasting the reality of Sharia law, Iranians, with being multicultural, they just rejected it. I saw recently footage of there's a river that comes from the north of Tehran and dams in a city called Karaj, huge dam. And I saw on the shore of that river, tens of thousands of Quran people dropped it in that river. And it was all, washed by the shore. That tells you that out of the 75,000 mosques in Iran, 50,000 have closed their doors.
Wow.
That means Iran is the first Islamic nation that is turning their back on Islam. They're turning away from Islam. And in 2003, the Lord led me to a long story, but to start a satellite network. Since then, we have prayed with tens of thousands of Iranian Muslims. And I'm talking about people from all aspects of the society, all levels. The government, the people, even Ayatollahs have come to the Lord by watching our programs. And 90% of the people that have come to the Lord have seen Jesus either in a dream, in a vision, or in person. So there's an outpouring of God upon that land, which is all part of the purpose of what's happening in these last days. A very interesting subject. I've just finished a book on Israel, and I will go through all of this, and a very interesting subject about the whole thing with Iran and Israel and what's going to happen in the days to come.
Wow, that's exciting. Can't wait to read it. And Pastor, before we let you go, we're not mostly in a position to be able to change government policy or dictate this or that, but what can individual Christians, individual Americans do to try to just improve the situation? I mean, we know Islam is invading the United States. It's invading the West very rapidly through mass migration. We see the havoc that it's causing in the Middle East. What are some things that regular, everyday Christian moms, dads can do to try to bring some light to this situation, to try to honor the Lord?
The Bible says, pray for those who are in authority. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Our government, our president, although I love him so much, but there's a lack of wisdom in dealing with it. And it has been throughout, all administration in America, not knowing how to deal with the radical Islam and Islamic mindset. So I think we need to pray for people that have wisdom, the people that are in charge of various ministry in our government, that they know how to deal with these people, understand how to read them. This idea of, signing a contract and going in a treaty with Iran, it's all messed up because they don't understand how the Iranian people, how these people in the regime think. And I think that wisdom, understanding, right people to advise our president and his administration, I think it's very important. And that is our task, that God grants these people wisdom that we may live in a peaceful and quiet time in all godliness.
Amen. And folks, that's a command, even if you don't like those in authority. Even when Biden was president or whatever, we're supposed to be praying for our leaders all the time, whether we like them or not. Pastor, this has been a joy to speak with you. I hope we can talk to you again. Your website is Reza Safa, that's RezaSafa.com. People can learn more about you and your books. How else can people follow you?
Just pray for us, and they can get these books on Amazon and various places. So I appreciate your support.
Hey, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate the insights, and I hope we can talk to you again.
Absolutely.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're going to go to break. We've got another guest coming on who's going to also share a story about leaving Islam. So much needs to be said about this. We can't emphasize it enough. But stay with us. We're going to be right back after this quick break with more here on the Sentinel Report.
Your children are your legacy. Treat them as such. When you homeschool with Classical Conversations, they connect you with a local community of like-minded families who not only learn together, but do life together. They equip homeschool parents just like you or grandparents with the confidence to raise bright, observant students who have a lifelong love of learning. Please visit classicalconversations.com/LSM to learn more.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, the religion of Islam has a lot of victims, and that has been true for a long time. There are plenty of decent people who call themselves Muslim, but if you look at the long track record of Islam, there's a lot of victims, and there are victims even here in our own country. One of these stories is told by my friend who we're going to bring on in just a moment, Chris Casler. It's heartbreaking, but it's also hopeful and encouraging. But I think it's important for people to realize that this isn't something over there in Iran or in the Middle East. This is now in our country. So we're going to bring on my friend Chris Casler. He's a documentary maker. He's the co-founder of Common Sense Florida. He's a dedicated leader in the political arena. He has political campaign experience going all the way back to California in the 1980s. Just recently, he published a new book called Fleeing Islam. It's a novel written as a screenplay, and it tells a true story. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. Last year, he also designed and minted a silver coin that is designed to bring awareness to the campaign to abolish abortion in the United States, which, of course, we are big supporters of here on the Sentinel Report. I first met Chris when we did a documentary. He did a great documentary called America in Peril in 2020. He was kind enough to include me in that. If you haven't seen it yet, you should. And he's done so much. He's been the executive director of Legal Immigrants for America, a wonderful group. The Washington Post praised his work in a front page story as a masterpiece of political imagery. Chris, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Alex. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be in the presence of one of my media heroes.
Well, you're too kind. Thank you, Chris. And you do so much great work. I wanted to bring you on to talk about your new book, Fleeing Islam, Rifqa, Bary's Path to Freedom. As I was reading this story, just, heartbroken. Thankfully, there's a happy ending that brings glory to the Lord. But tell us about this story. I mean, you wrote a book about it under a pen name, Charles Hammer, of course, the English version of Charles Martel, the man who famously stopped the Islamic invasions in France over 1,000 years ago. But tell us about this book, Fleeing Islam, Rifqa, Bary's Path to Freedom.
Well, Rifqa was a young girl in Ohio. Her family was from Sri Lanka, and she was going to local schools there. And one week, one of her classmates took her to church, and she came to Christ. It was pretty much that simple. She got it on the spot. And I don't know if you don't have the cover up. Do you have the cover on the screen?
We do, yeah.
You can see that is the drawing of her leaving church that first day. We wrote this as a screenplay, or I wrote it as a screenplay, based on the account of two pastors who protected Rifqa after she ran away from Ohio, came to Central Florida. What happened was that her father found her Bible under her bed. He threatened to kill her. And she was well aware of honor killings. Two of the girls in Texas, her age, had recently been shot by their own father just before this. And so she took it to heart and fled, got on a Greyhound bus and came down here. She had an internet Facebook connection with Beverly Lorenz. They were in a prayer group together. She didn't know Beverly, but this was the only place she felt that she could go. And she came here. The Lorenzes, welcomed her, took her in, sheltered her as best they could. And then, of course, the whole story erupted into a legal battle over who had custody over a runaway from Ohio living in Florida, who's refusing to go home because he's afraid. And we had a legal and political battle between the governor of Ohio, the governor of Florida. We had Marco Rubio's in the book, and so forth. This was a major issue. Finally, Rifqa was freed from the onus of all of this when she turned 18 and was granted legal residency in the United States, and has since become a citizen, graduate of law school, very involved in legal prosecutions in the state where she now lives, married and has family. So it's all turned out very, very well for her. But the story illustrates the savagery of this belief system that says that if you leave the faith, you are subject to death by anyone who cares to carry out the sentence. It's unfortunate. It's what happened to Salman Rushdie, who wrote a book over 30 some years ago and has had a fatwa on his head ever since, and was attacked not too long ago, as I'm not mistaken, in New York State when he was giving a speech. A man rushed the stage and almost killed him with a knife.
Yeah. Yeah. And folks, this is real. I mean, Sharia law literally prescribes capital punishment for those who apostatize from Islam. And that's not a joke. It happens regularly. It was happening in Sweden before we moved from there, as Muslim parents would kill their own children for leaving the Islamic movement. And it's been going on for a very long time. In fact, our producer here on this program, Annie Cyrus, who's been a guest on this show as well, she's got a similar story of fleeing Islam, fleeing from Iran. And of course, the leadership of Islam does not like that, does not approve of that. Chris, you talk in the story in the book about how Christians stepped up to the plate here. It's just such a wonderful story. Go into a little bit more depth on how Christians stepped up and helped Rifqa here to escape from this horrific fate.
Well, first she was helped in Ohio by a young man who had baptized her. And I don't know if you can see it on the cover of the book down there in the lower right-hand corner, the small illustration of her getting baptized. On the lower left-hand corner is an illustration of her when she was being forced to go to the mosque. And at any rate, she was first helped in Ohio by those with whom she prayed secretly. And in fact, she was a part of a nationwide online prayer group. But she got to the bus station, got on a Greyhound bus, came down here. She was taken in by Blake and Beverly Lorenz, who are true prayer warriors, and they saved her life. There's no question. When the case ended up going to court, where she was first charged as a runaway, almost as a criminal, taken into court in chains. But she was finally released from that. She had representation from Matt Staver at Liberty Counsel, not formal representation, but assistance is more accurate. And throughout the story, Christians prayed for her, provided the necessary means to actually provide for her. She was shunted back and forth between foster homes here and in Ohio. It was a real ordeal. Through it all, she saw it through with prayer, not just hers, but everyone's. She got her high school degree, cum laude, and then she had a major setback. She was diagnosed with a terrible form of cancer, went into the hospital, and finally survived all of that and came out on the other side. It's a marvelous story. And I do want to make sure that it's clear to people that this is not just a novel. It's a graphic novel. It's illustrated, 100-some pages to tell the story, in a graphic manner, so that people who, I'm sorry. So here you can see she's in chains in court when they first brought her to court on that first occasion, and then of course she is also later on. We have all of the court proceedings with John Stemberger, whom you probably know. Yeah. Don't you?
Yeah, I know him and Matt Staver. These are wonderful, brilliant men of God attorneys, and so grateful for their intervention in this case. Chris, we've only got a couple minutes left. Before we talk a little bit about the silver coins that you just minted, I do want to make sure people know how to get a copy of the book. I know it's on Amazon. What's the best way for people to get a copy of this?
The best way to get it is to go straight to Amazon. It's $19.99 on Amazon. They deliver it in 3 days. And just look for the title, Fleeing Islam. You don't need any more than that. It'll pop up right away.
Excellent. And folks, go check that out. It's called Fleeing Islam, Rifqa, Bary's Path to Freedom, a true story based on the accounts of Pastors Blake and Beverly Lorenz.
Let me make one request, Alex. I'm sorry to jump in on you.
No, go ahead, Chris.
This was written as a screenplay initially, and I've written a great number of screenplays. I actually directed a film in the 1970s, believe it or not, a movie. But back to this, my original concept is to make this into a movie. The book now serves as a storyboard. So if anybody out there listening is interested in perhaps turning this into a motion picture, we have all the necessary ingredients, and I'd love to hear from you.
Fantastic. And these stories need to be told. This stuff so often happens in the shadows. The politically correct media doesn't want to talk about it because it reflects badly on mass migration or Islam or the local mosque or whatever. But these are stories that need to be told. These are innocent people who are being persecuted wrongfully It's just horrific. I'm grateful to you for writing this book, Chris. Before we let you go, and I do want everybody to go get a copy of that. It's on Amazon. You just minted last year. You designed and minted a coin to help support the campaign to abolish abortion. I know we hadn't planned on talking about this, but just give us 30 seconds on why you did that and how people can look into them.
Can you see this?
Yes, beautiful.
It's a 1 ounce, 0.999 pure silver coin, minted at the Highland Mint in Melbourne, Florida. And I designed it. And on the obverse, which is this side, it says, "Am I not a child to you, my brothers and sisters?" With the infant in the center. And on the opposite side, which is the reverse, as we say in coin, it has, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb." Psalm 139:13. So it's and it's a pure silver coin. We sell them for $99.99. $10 for
which is now not much above the spot price. Silver has gone so crazy.
That's right. Well, considering the cost of the dyes and I did the design work, didn't cost anything. We're pretty much selling them at what the silver's worth these days.
Yeah.
And I also have them available in nifty little boxes, velvet covered boxes with a little inscription. So
fantastic. Folks, that's a great way if you want to help support the campaign to abolish abortion. Chris, you also did a documentary, America in Peril. It's on YouTube, folks. I encourage you to watch that. I was blessed to be included in there. It's about the many threats to our country, in particular communism and Islam and other things. Great film. Chris, is there any way people can follow you? What's the website? How do people keep track of what you are doing, all this important work?
Well, I don't really do very much social media, partly because I'm lazy. But I'm just busy with too many other things. I've got another book going and a couple of other projects. I just came back from several days at the Ark Encounter in Kentucky and the Creation Museum, which is a whole nother story we could talk about on another occasion. But the fact is, I do have a website. I'm Chris Casler. That's ChrisCasler.com. And by the way, that's where the coin can be purchased. So you go to the website and you do the usual click in and use Apple Pay or whatever you've got, and we'll send it to you by Federal Express.
Excellent. ChrisCasler.com. And folks, you can find that video or that book, Fleeing Islam, Rifqa, Bary's Path to Freedom. That's available on Amazon. Chris Casler, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for what you're doing, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you, Alex. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you too. Thank you so much, Chris. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We are going to be right back here on the Sentinel Report with more right after this quick break.
In the grand tapestry of nature, a delicate balance weaves life's intricate threads. Today, this balance is faltering more and more as bee populations face unprecedented challenges. Without a collective effort to rescue our bees and enhance biodiversity, we're headed for devastation on a global scale. But amidst the chaos, a solution has emerged. A rallying cry echoes. A call to protect these guardians of our food chain. Introducing 4R Bees, a technology-driven organization that is saving bees globally and organically every day. At 4R Bees, we understand the critical role that bees play in maintaining the balance of our ecosystem. Saving the bees is synonymous with saving our planet, and 4R Bees is at the forefront of this mission. Visit 4rbees.com to learn more about how you can save the bees and redefine the course of our future.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, we talked earlier in the news segment about the attempted shooting of Trump and some of his key officials in Washington, D.C. Joining us today to discuss this and much more is my friend Brad Ward. He's the co-founder of Armor of Truth. If you're not subscribed to their Substack yet, you need to be. Some of the most insightful analysis from a Christian perspective that you will find anywhere on the internet. I read it every time it lands in my inbox. Brad, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. I know you've been tracking closely Donald Trump's efforts to root out the deep state and this question of whether the globalists are still in charge. But before we even get to all that, let's talk about the shooting. What's your take? What's going on here?
Well, the way I'm thinking about it, and through the evidence, if we can, the information that we have so far on it, it's beginning to look like that he probably had some help, to get into the hotel the way he did and to have access that way. I'm not sure how it works there, but whether he was a lone wolf or not, we can safely say that the rhetorical influence of the left, the Mockingbird, MSM media, and our nation has radicalized a significant portion of our nation. But we always want to be asking the right question, who wants Trump gone? Is it the left? Sure. Who controls the left? Is it the globalists, the elites, satanic cabal? Yes, yes, yes. Who are they? In other words, who's ultimately responsible for this long-term project that we've seen over the last 50 years or so?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Whether there were people helping this guy or not, it's very clear that the radical left is encouraging its supporters to lash out in ways like this. I mean, we've all seen the endless clips on CNN and the Democrat politicians like, somebody should kill them, somebody should do violence, somebody should blow this up. I mean, it's like unbelievable, the kind of rhetoric that we're seeing. And Trump is literally Hitler, And of course, we all know that if he's literally Hitler, then of course he'd be justified in killing him. It's really, really disgusting. Brad, as you know, the MAGA movement, if you will, Make America Great Again, America First, is kind of fracturing right now. And there are some people, as you are well aware, within Trump's early coalition who are starting to get really skeptical of Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, the low IQ crowd, as Trump describes them. You have a different take. We just published one of your excellent articles that you and your wife did, Armor of Truth, over at libertysentinel.org. And I know you think that Trump is actually making progress on wiping out this deep state and its control over our country. Walk us through your thoughts on this.
Okay, yeah. Think of it this way. 20 years ago, we heard both Republicans and Democrats warning against the weaponization of multiculturalism, diversity, and resentment, just like what you were just mentioning about the shooter. And they were saying this 20 years ago, both parties, that would be an effective operation to bring down America. And they saw it growing. One of the first documents to go viral on the internet was in 2001, a short speech by Democrat Governor of Colorado, Richard Lamb. He warned of a force deliberately fostering disunity in America in exactly the same terms that we describe as woke today. So if we can agree that, and if I should set this up, what I want to do is, you mentioned we have a different take, so I would kind of like to encourage my direct peers, those of us who are sort of in this space working together, if we can agree that the status quo in the West since World War II has been the rise of the liberal international order, which, among other things, has included the managed decline of the middle class in the U.S., deindustrialization, manipulation of currencies, the financialization of everything, centralized control of governments, banking, and trade. If we can agree that those who have maintained this status quo would do everything in their power to protect their investment, and if we can agree that America's institutions have been slowly infiltrated and transformed by that same force that both Democrats and Republicans were criticizing 20, 30 years ago, even more recently, we can probably agree they would be motivated to act to neutralize anyone, particularly an American president, who posed a legitimate threat to their project. So I'm seeing a lot of analysis from podcasters and researchers and authors on our side of the worldview divide, who are claiming that the Trump administration is working against the interests of the American people by helping the globalist project, orchestrating the completion of technocratic regionalism, or that its policy on Iran is just merely the same neocon-style foreign policy interventionism we got from Bush and Obama in Iraq and Afghanistan. So the argument goes kind of like this. The Trump administration's national security strategy, and I would highly recommend, I would suggest it's necessary to read that to get a feel for what they're doing. This national security strategy explicitly rejects that model and stands out as utterly unique among the foreign policy strategies of the last 30 years or so, because it has as its priority the good of the American people, because it emphasizes political, industrial, economic, and ideological sovereignty. So where Bush announced H.W. Bush announced and exalted the virtues of the New World Order as the rules-based international order, or managed decline and deindustrialization, centralization, the Trump administration's national security strategy stands in bold opposition to all of that. And the reason we say that is because there's an intellectual tradition behind the Trump administration. It's really not about Donald Trump so much. Figures like Michael Anton, a political theorist, scholar who was one of the primary architects of the strategy, influenced by Thomas G. West and others who represent a continuation of this intellectual tradition that finds its roots in the founders of the American system, of the original American system. Yeah. So we think that's the right conceptual frame for distinguishing the present administration from the bipartisan globalist managerial consensus that preceded it.
Yeah. And you've got a fascinating take on this. I encourage people to read it. We've only got a couple minutes left here before we've got to wrap up this segment. But you talk about the return of the American system. And I think a lot of people, especially people who've been educated, so-called recently in the government school system, are not even really familiar with what that means. So give us a 30-second explanation of the American system that you think is being brought back.
Okay, one of the things that the strategy says, they argue for the permanent American domination of the world was a mistake, forever global burdens. The American system is essentially this: reindustrialization. We use tariffs to protect the middle class and to make ourselves energy independent, and several other things that are very, very intriguing and encouraging when you get in there and find out what it is that you see. Jameson Greer was one of those who gave this talk at Davos, where he talked specifically about this system. Scott Bessent refers to it. So it's essentially that, Alex. It's the return to sovereignty. And in the strategy, in the national security strategy, Trump's policy on Iran is distinguished distinctly from the Bush era analysis. So that's what the American system is. It is sovereignty, economic sovereignty, ideological sovereignty as well, and making us independent to finally finish the war for our independence from the imperial system.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a really great piece, folks. Go check it out. You can find it at libertysentinel.org. You can also find it at Armor of Truth. It's a wonderful Substack. You can go to substack.com or armoroftruth.substack.com. And if you're not yet a subscriber, you should be. Click that little subscribe button. You'll get their updates in your email box. I'm telling you, it's really, really good stuff, all from a Christian perspective. That's at armoroftruth.substack.com. Brad Ward, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for your analysis on this, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for the opportunity, Alex.
Absolutely. God bless you, sir. All righty, folks, that is all we have time for today on the Sentinel Report, but I want to thank you for tuning in. I know we covered a lot of topics today: Islam, globalism, the wars, the attempted assassination of our president and some of his key officials. So go to the website for more, libertysentinel.org. You can sign up for our newsletter there as well. I want to thank you once again for tuning in. Support our sponsors and keep yourself informed. Stay praying and get involved. Thanks again. Alex Newman here for the Sentinel Report. Until next time, we appreciate you. God bless you all.